Starting this Wednesday, healthy drink options will be the default for kids at restaurants in Montgomery County. Legislation passed by the county council last year requires restaurants serving kids meals to offer healthier options like water, sparkling water, low-fat milk. I'm joined now by Dr. Yolanda Hancock, a member of the American Heart Association Greater Washington Region Board of Directors. Yolanda, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So it's hard to believe and hard to wrap your mind around the fact that Montgomery County is actually the second jurisdiction in the country to actually require restaurants to offer at least one healthy meal, a healthy drink that meets these nutritional standards. Talk to me about, first of all, just the inspiration behind this effort.
Right. We recognize that in terms of obesity, here in the state of Maryland, Maryland has the 10th highest childhood obesity rate in the United States. Almost 18% of children in our state between the ages of 10 to 17 are dealing with obesity. Compare that to the entire country at 15%. Montgomery County particularly has an obesity rate among high school students of around 8.6%. When you break that down even further, particularly in terms of racial and ethnic background, we see that there's some disparities. Latinos have a rate of obesity of around 15%, African Americans close to 11%, where white children in the same age group have an obesity rate of around 4%. This only got worse during the pandemic. The CDC recognized that obesity rates went from around 34% all the way up to close to 43%. What this bill does, it allows communities, parents specifically, I'm a parent myself, to make the healthy choice the easy choice. As of Wednesday, when you go into a fast food establishment, by default, the healthy beverage is what is given. Parents still have the freedom of choice. You choose for your child to have a sugar-sweetened drink.
But this gives
it is really up to the parent.
Yeah, this gives the option of that restaurant at least to offer it to the parents to be able to give it to their kids. Now, this legislation has two parts. The first part, rolling out this Wednesday, is about healthier drinks. 6 months later, we're actually talking about healthy meals. Let's get into some of the specifics when it comes to healthy drinks. What are we talking about? What are some good alternative options to what's giving out right now?
Absolutely. In terms of healthy drinks, it requires them to offer at least milk, water, sparkling water, as you mentioned, and we also are including fruit juice. Now, the American Heart Association opposed that, but in terms of making concessions for what food establishments are providing, they allowed that to be the case, particularly when you compare it to legislation that was pushed out initially in Prince George's County. When you look across the country, there are several places where healthy beverage legislation has passed, but in terms of encompassing the entire meal, Prince George's County certainly set the precedent, and Montgomery County followed. In terms of nutrition, what we're allowing is at least 1/4 cup of fruit or vegetables in the meal, a whole grain product, a lean product, inclusive of milk as part of that consideration. When it comes to the default beverage, one of the things that we have to take into consideration is that the Restaurant Association wanted to actually allow fruit juice to count as a fruit serving, but we collectively pushed against that because we know that it's important for our children to get in their 3 to 5 servings of fruits and vegetables every single day, given how much sugary beverages our children are drinking.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's hard to believe that this is not already done at restaurants, but I'm glad it's an initiative that Montgomery County is clearly being a leader on. Let's talk about how this will impact the community as a whole and hopefully set a precedent, because I know a lot of Black and brown communities simply don't have access to a lot of fruits and vegetables, causing a lot of long-term problems for our kids.
You bring up a very excellent point. One of the questions raised was, why is this necessary? One, we know that only about 3% of restaurant establishments actually follow the restaurant guidelines in terms of provision of what is included in this legislation. Two, to your point about disparities in terms of access, we know that there's disparate exposure and consumption of sugary drinks based on targeted marketing of communities of color, but also what we consider to be food swamps, concentrated areas where fast food restaurants exist. And that's usually in communities of color. So what this legislation does is it meets parents where they are until we can sort of transition when it comes to justice issues related to food. As we're working through that, this is an excellent start, because where families find themselves in communities, in under-resourced areas where they may not necessarily have access to whole foods, fruits and veggies, where they have contact at restaurants, at fast food establishments, this legislation allows families to be able to still make a healthier choice, even in the face of the majority of the food offerings being fast food.
Well, I'm a mom. I love all of this that's happening, and I applaud Montgomery County and everybody behind it for getting it done. Yolanda Hancock, thank you so much for your expertise and for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.